Hello, and welcome back to the crew. Today, we're asking a question that's been hanging around many of us, probably since about grade school. And the question is, do we still have to be nice? You know what I mean? That pressure to smile, to smooth things over, to say, "Oh, it's fine." It's absolutely not fine. Somewhere along the line, nice might happen to be the partner of being a good woman, a good friend, a good everything. You got to be nice. But what does it really mean? And do you think it might be time to trade nice for something better? Something more like real? So, Anne, welcome. Glad you're with me this morning. I know we've all had our nice girl moments, but when was the last time that being nice might have backfired on you? Where it, well, if you had a be nice moment, I know we're two totally different personalities, so this could kind of lead off the discussion here. But think about it. Did you? I'm sure you did. Have one of those nice girl times. Um, when you did try to smooth something over and maybe it didn't work out so well.
The thing that immediately pops into my mind, because I actually don't consider myself to be nice in the way that nice girls and people pleasing and those kinds of things. I don't consider myself to be nice, but I have found, since this rewiring stage, that I'm much nicer than I thought I was. And so I've actually been trying to, I'll say, change that and look out more for where am I bending over backwards, and it that generally doesn't work. Bending over backwards doesn't work. This is what I tell my coaching clients, and it's kind of, oh my God, that's what I did. And the one that backfired on me most recently, and the only one I can actually think of because it was big, was when a friend begged me to go with her on holiday. And it was to a place I didn't want to go. I don't like heat. So it was to a place I didn't want to go because it was hot. And that drains me completely. And so I came back from that trip feeling really terrible, swollen ankles and all of that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, in me trying to um, explain that I couldn't, I'm going to say, come up to her standards. That's putting it probably a bit harshly, but coming up to her standards I just couldn't do it anymore. And so the friendship is no longer there in the same way that it was. So that one backfired, and I knew it was going to happen. I said, look, this could ruin our friendship. Well, sometimes I really don't like being right. But I was in that case. So yeah, that one totally backfired. Yeah. Because I was doing it just for her. It was not anything I would have done or chosen to do for myself.
Thank you for sharing that. Kind of bear the soul moment there. I was trying to think of a recent time when I played the nice card. So I came up with one that's a totally different example than yours, but I had met someone that I thought that would be okay to maybe start a friendship there, a gentleman, not a female. And so I thought, well, this will be okay. So I'll try this one on for size. Well, I think probably well, maybe it wasn't after the first coffee, but definitely after the second coffee. Um, and I was nice all the way through where you kind of had the feeling where I wanted to say during the coffee, what about me? When are you going to ask me about me? And so And so I didn't, right? So that's my version. Okay, I was the nice one. I was just trying to, whatever. So then it, progressed from coffee to going out for lunch or something. But there were consistent red flags all the way along. And I never, ever, struck a conversation up about that because I was being nice. I didn't want to, because anything would have, anyway. So then finally, like it was just sort of getting worse. So the very last conversation that I had with the fellow, I just I just said something. I said something about you're kind of spoiled, aren't you? And he didn't like that at all. But so maybe I said it wrong, blah, blah, blah. But I was just trying to be nice and point out that, well, this doesn't fit with my pic. But anyway, so I never had to talk to him again. So my thing of being nice didn't really backfire. But when I brought it around to reality of, starting a discussion about something that needed to be addressed. Like, not that I needed to change anybody, but it wasn't fitting me. So a boundary had been crossed. So the being nice for me, that was just sort of over. So I don't know. I guess people could look at that or listen to that story and say, well, you weren't very nice by not talking it out with him or not trying to resolve the thing. So my comeback to that was there was just too many things. It wasn't just water. Anyway,
I mean, even the fact that he came back with, disgust or disdain at being called spoilt is a red flag in itself. And with my experience, it's kind of okay. You can't change people. You actually couldn't change that about the person. So, why bother trying? But you said something very telling there, which I want to follow up on here, which is you talked about using Chat GPT and you called her a she. You called her her. Is it because she was being nice? She was being introspective.
maybe not just in that case, because you know how the older version of before Chat GPT 5, before that, it was telling you every time you did something or said something or was training, it was telling you how good you were. So back in the old version, I think that could have been true, but I had labeled chat, I have called her chatty. And I have referred to her as a her all the time because that's kind of how I feel like when I'm talking to her. It's like when I come to you, or before I used to go to my sister, a trusted friend,
Yep.
for advice for me. Those people in my life have been female.
Yes, but that's just speaks entirely to what you're talking about the nice, about nice girls, the nice girl thing. So is ChatGPT female because she's coming across with those stereotypical nice girl things?
I don't know. I probably would have labeled her as female no matter what. And I still do, even though this new version of GPT isn't as, it's taken away some of that pleasantries and trying to always please. And also with the way I prompt, because I prompt for, I've even said once or twice, don't be so nice.
Right.
Tell me the truth. And so
Yes.
then you get a different version of that. But I don't know. I'm not sure why I refer to her as a her, but I have right from the get-go.
Yeah, it just seemed to um um I'm thinking of my car, and I'm definitely one of those people that anthropomorphize, or whatever that word is, things. And thinking my car, first my car was male, is his, her, whatever, gender neutral thing is Nigel. And he was very brum brum, all of this kind of stuff. He was a he car. And then he started to mellow down and become nice and do what I told him to, and and treat me nicely, and he became a she. So, my God, how about that then?
Well, that was a fun tangent.
Yeah.
Always go with the flow. Yeah. Well, it kind of brings me the thought going back to, because I'm not sure. I like this definition of this nice thing. Like for me, in some instances, it is a positive thing, but in a lot of other instances, that nice has a negative connotation to it. And I'm wondering if we trade the words and where we use nice rather than kind, I'm wondering what would the difference be between nice and kind? Because when I think of kind and putting that in my for myself, when I'm being kind to someone, it sometimes isn't the same as when I was nice to the same person in the same situation. Am I complicating things, or do you have some thoughts on nice versus kind?
Yeah. There was a distinction the other day, but of course now I can't remember it. And for me, being nice and being kind are very similar, especially when I think of other people. When I'm being kind, I'm coming from the heart. Yes, that's right. So when I'm being kind, I'm coming from that, I'll call that place of love. When I'm being nice, if I want to make black and white distinctions, I'm coming from a place of fear.
Oh,
And I say that it's hard to see that in myself. You know how sometimes it's really hard to see things in yourself? So the easiest thing for me is that I'm thinking of another person that I know very well. And she was brought up to be the nice girl. And she has a really hard time not being a nice girl. And there are definitely situations where that doesn't work for her, because when you try and be nice, maybe this is a good distinction. When you try and be nice, you're oftentimes trying to gloss over the situation or try and, calm somebody down, right? Instead of getting to the meat of the issue, or behaving in a way which might have a breakthrough in the relationship. For example, tough love, right? Some people have a real hard time with tough love, and I define that as doing something that will help the relationship, even although it might be hard on, both or multiple participants, right? But you're doing something that you think might actually work, as opposed to trying to be nice and calm things down and, be I'll say overly positive. So, yeah, that's the difference between. So, yeah, okay. So, tough love is, you could call tough love being kind, because if you're doing something for somebody that you think will work for that person, then you're being kind, but it's hard on your own self, because if you're brought up to be nice, it's hard to be tough.
yes. I think that sits right with my thinking. One comment that I had to what you just said was at the beginning. You said that how was it? Kind is from the heart. Did you say that? And so then I go to the other side, and nice is from the head. That's the way I put it. It's okay. Well, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about how to put it together and the words to use, and you end up being nice because you're that way. Whereas when you're from the heart, you're going to do what and you're human enough and loving enough and kind enough to do what you really feel is best for that person in that moment, in that instance. It doesn't necessarily mean about all of the things, but in that moment and in that instance, you're thinking from the heart
Yep.
rather than from the head.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's things from the head are very often coming from fear. Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about it before,
Mm.
but yeah, a fear of many things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's like, well,
Yeah.
it's one of those things about being in the moment, listening to your heart. Because I should have just said no to my friend.
I think it's how you say it, right? It's And I get caught up in that. Like I am a fairly kind person, but I'm a person of very few words. So when in that instance, if I've had time to think about something and then react, well, then I can, um, uh, I can definitely come more from the heart. But in the moment, when it's a mixture of head and heart at the same time, then the words that I use are not necessarily the kind words as they would be if I had more time to think about it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, and actually that's backwards because when we just go into, so I've learned to stop, look, and listen is the way we've been trained as kids, right? But yeah, stop, look, and listen, and it really means stop, look, and listen to my heart, right? So in that moment when something has happened, somebody said something or whatever it is, right? It's kind of okay, get rid of my head, go into my heart. What am I truly feeling right now? Sometimes that can be incredibly confusing, and I don't always have the words for it. But I now try and struggle to find that. And at least it halts that thing in the moment. And I just was listening before this podcast to a Brené Brown podcast on when silence is the best response. So silence is very often the best response rather than coming from their head, which often says something which is not kind. Because we're protecting ourselves, we go into defensive mode. I go into defensive mode, yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think like for all of us, but I'm speaking about myself in particular right now. Obviously that's isolating something where I should have a look at my 24 strengths and find what I could work on to move up. It's probably maybe I forget where kindness is in mine. But obviously, if I worked on moving it up, using a strategy like what you just gave of hold on, take a minute, take a breath. You don't have to say anything right this minute,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's a really good point. There you go, Coach Ann. Thank you.
I think
All
it's,
right.
sorry, I'm just going to
Uh-huh.
finish
No,
off
go
that
ahead.
thought. I think it's partly the way we've been trained, right? So I was trained anyway. I'm a Brit. I come from a Scottish Brit. I come from a very talkative civilization, I'll call it. But and I was always taught to answer quickly, right? So you answer things quickly, and so that most often well, certainly used to, comes from the head, right? Because it's thoughts, and it's often coming from ego because it's in the head. Therefore, it comes from that place of being nice if you're trying to appease. So answer quickly, but you still be nice. Like, don't, one of the maxims was don't say anything unless you can say something nice. I forgot what the real words are, but it's something like that, right? Don't say anything unless you can say something positive. Yeah. I was definitely taught that.
So where do you think this and I'm going to call it a habit, and maybe Canadians have it more than many, many others. I think Canadians are um, uh, known for, oh, I'm sorry, 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 oh, sorry. Like somebody might have stepped on my toe, and I say, oh, sorry. Like I put my foot in the wrong place under their foot. And it, like, what is that? Where does that come from? Why do we apologize so much? Have you got any thought on that?
Oh God, yes, it just reminds me of walking into a lamppost and saying sorry to the lamppost.
You know what? I think we've all done it.
I think so too. And and it seems utterly ridiculous. However, I was actually listening to another YouTube the other day, and it was talking about people who talk to their animals, and also people who talk to plants, and people who talk to inanimate objects like their handbag or their coffee mug or whatever it happens to be. And it comes from a well of caring, and that's kindness. So, not necessarily nice, that's actually kindness. because we're anthropomorphizing the lamppost and thinking it's a person, because it could have been a person because it's, in the middle of the road. So, right? Regardless of how that came about, it still comes from a place of caring, I think.
I agree with you. And I'm trying to get rid of the word but. And um, is it also a little bit habit forming? Like, and maybe that's a good thing. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's negative. I don't know. And Canadians kind of have that. Do you notice that?
Oh,
That
oh,
we,
absolutely. Yeah, it is definitely a habit. So, and this saying sorry to things is a habit. And I've been trying to understand some other psychological stuff. And one of the things I've come across, I'm a Scot and not English, even though I have an English accent. I was brought up in England. And very often when people are talking about Brits, they talk about the English. So the Scots have a different culture. Not all of them. This is a bit stereotypical, but it's my experience. And the Scots and the Irish tend to be blunt, right? We tend to be blunt. What I'm not going to call it Celtic because it's much more complicated than that. But that is very different to the feudal English who had to be subservient to their feudal overlords and therefore had to be nice. And when I was, it was people who were looking at the differences between American, Canadian, and British culture. And they were saying, the Brits are so nice, right? And this is the Canadians too. We never say anything directly. We always try and get to it by going roundabout means because we're trying to be nice. And that's so effed up.
so that's why Canadians would have it.
Yeah.
It's because of our British
Yep.
heritage, basically.
Yes.
Um, also in politics, like in everything, kind of
Yes.
permeates everything, doesn't it?
Hmm. Yeah. And one of my culture shocks when I first came to Canada was how more British the Canadians were. This is in Ontario. How more British the Canadians were than the British. The British had moved on a little bit, whereas the Canadians are still hanging on to a lot of Victorian things.
We're stuck. But it makes me wonder if, like, obviously being nice isn't necessarily a bad thing. And being kind is, in my world, it got a connotation of being a good thing, although I guess there would be examples. I mean, I'm sure we'll come up with examples that from people commenting and whatnot of, oh, this person is always kind and this is what they did this time. Anyways, um, it depends on, again, it depends on the context, but I'm wondering if redefining that word nice, if we need to, if that would help if we did redefine it in terms of, boundaries and truth and, giving grace to people, kind of those kindness attributes. I don't know. Or do we? Like, do I need to, should I put this on Worry Wednesday and
I don't think we
have something that I need
necessarily
to work
need
on?
a new word, but then again, I'm one of those old-fashioned people that believe in just using the words properly. I think it's about understanding what the differences are and understanding where you're coming from. Because a lot of people would consider themselves kind. And man, this gets us into something interesting. I fundamentally believe we're all self-focused and self-centered. We have to be to survive. And a lot of people will put other people first, thinking they're being kind or thinking they're being appropriate to their religion, those kinds of things, when ultimately all they're actually wanting is to be liked. And that is detrimental to every side of the equation because it's not honest.
Yes, liked, heard, seen,
Yeah.
all of those. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And what's true is that you are most liked, seen, and heard when you're authentic.
Right. Which comes back to learning about, and maybe we work on this a little bit more after our 50s and 60s because we have the time to work on it. Our world isn't spinning around quite the same as it did when we were younger. And so we have time to work on that and to find out, well, what is that boundary? Where did, have I got a boundary? I call them the rules, right? And what is my truth? How do I show people grace? Thinking through those things and um, getting better because of it, maybe.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
mhm. You
You s-
did say the word authentic, but you said, yeah, I forget how you put it, but do you have some tips or tricks or things that you do that help you to stay kind, but still be authentic?
yeah, absolutely. Okay. So for a person who's learned a hell of a lot over the last one, now 25 years, um, I recognize my own where I go to, where am I coming from? Am I coming from my heart, which is, I was going to say, not always authentic necessarily, but it's doing the best it can. So going to my heart instead of my head and all of those shoulds and woulds and couldas and all of them things, going to my heart and just saying what I'm feeling instead of, I don't know, making a decision or a prognostication or a whatever, the head things does. Yeah, making differences. So when I come from my heart, then that obviously that authentic part is coming out of me. I'm perfectly happy somebody saying, "Well, Anne, that's bullshit," and then going, "Okay, hang on a minute. What am I avoiding, distracting, covering up in myself?" Because I believe we all do that. But what I have learned through this whole process for myself is I have way more tolerance and compassion and empathy than I ever used to because I know how fallible I am and how I've made all of these mistakes and I can understand how I made these mistakes. So I'm much more tolerant and therefore can come from a place of kindness without that judgment that came from a place where I thought I knew better. I don't anymore. I know nothing.
Well, I think um, that underscores the fear have to be, not have to, but is be better if we're kind to ourselves first, and then we'll be able to be kind to others. Because actually, we know how that feels.
And you used, I think, as a key word. This was key for me anyway. Everybody finds their own path because they were all at different places doing blah, 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 whatever. And the word that you used was grace. So before I could learn any of this stuff, I had to give myself grace. And by grace, what I'm meaning is allowing myself to make mistakes, allowing myself to be okay with, oh God, you just didn't know that. Not I should have known better, which was the mantra I was brought up with. So don't play the blame game on yourself. So I had a time of living in grace. I had a time of, this is one of Wayne Dwyer's expressions, banish blame, banish doubt. Right? When you do those things and you observe what you did and what you want to change and what you're now doing and how different that feels in you, when you come from the heart, it might not feel good because you could certainly be still hurting somebody, but it feels complete is the only word I can think of in this moment. It feels whole. And when I learnt how to do those things, it it made me realize in relationship with other people how that works. I had to test it all out, this authenticity thing. I'm a scientist by background, right? Theory, hypothesis, and and put it into practice and see what happens. So, and I was stunned at how people respond. So that's positive reinforcement. So obviously, just keep doing that. Just keep being authentic. Just keep trying the best I can do in being authentic. And it always is the best that I can do. And recognizing everybody in any moment is doing the best that they can do.
Yes, we do the best we can do with what we've got.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
I would like to see
Where we
say
are.
where we're at. Yeah, where we're
Yes,
at, because
that's right.
where I'm at in a moment can be incredibly fearful or anxious
Yes.
or
Yes.
defensive or
Yes.
but it's
Yes.
recognizing those things. So observing yourself, observing
Mhm.
your emotions, observing your thoughts, learning from
Mhm.
them about how you do things, and then going, okay, that's not really who I am underneath this all. Or, as some people would say, what my soul is. If I'm trying to be authentic, is getting closer to my soul. Some people feel that. So, well, I like that.
Well, I want to thank you, Anne. This was a really, I don't know, I can't find the word, interesting, valuable, introspective, uh, good conversation, a good time. I learned some things, and I think I've got some things that I'm going to apply or definitely, work that
Mhm,
in.
mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
But for one thing, I not so sure that I necessarily like a nice girl badge. So that's not one that I want to wear. I think I would much rather wear the kind girl badge. So I'm going to work on that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, keep that honest there, because being
Mhm,
kind doesn't mean that you can't say something. So that honesty part,
mhm,
but in a kind way. And basically, I would like to take away from here, just be ourselves and more of ourselves with the increased kindness. Not a better or different version, just more.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's a good way of
And
putting it.
so, yeah. And I think this, I like the juxtaposition here, because the next crew session that we're going to do is on um, carry versus carrying. And that's hard to say, but it does bring some of that kindness in, and what happens to us, particularly as women, if we're a little bit lopsided one way or the other in that. So I look forward to having that conversation. And of course, for everyone out there in viewerland, if this conversation has um, raise something up for you, let us know in the comments, and we'd be happy to respond and to connect with you further on that. And I've also got a sailor's log, a reflection sheet, um, on reclaiming our voice and setting boundaries at the same time with that kindness and that grace. So it's just a one pager. You can work on it on your own. And if all you have to do is just put it in the comments that you'd like one of those, and I'll send you a link, or I'll send you the sheet. And we'll keep working on it together for sure. Thank you, Anne.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right. Until next time, stay kind, stay real, and above all, stay you. Bye for now.